Good day, good evening, wherever you may be tuned into this Frontrunner Zoom podcast. We've been doing these throughout the lockdown, and we're varying things a little bit today, speaking to Mr. Paul Mitchell from Siyavuma Sports. He's a football agent, and yeah, I'm sure you're picking up the pattern. By the time we're done with these interviews, we will have run the whole gamut of football people. Now that we're speaking to an agent, having spoken to coaches, to administrators, to players. So thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell, for kind of helping us come full circle. Welcome.
Thank you, Kamza. Thank you for having me on, and good evening to all the listeners.
Great, Paul. Let's start. I mean, obviously, agents have already had a bit of a tough job, just in general, because there's so much money being bandied about in football and all sorts of things to get your player placed on the right team with the right contract. Just how much harder has the whole COVID situation made your job as a footballing agent, and in what way?
I think, to be honest, it's just like any other business, or just like the majority of the global community in the world at the moment is going through. Is that, unfortunately, whether you're a football agent or a football player or a restaurant owner or a bar owner or whatever you do, I think we've all been affected, and football's no different. From our point of view, from a local point of view now, obviously waiting for hopefully football to resume, training to resume, and then hopefully the PSL to finish. But yeah, I mean, in terms of player movements and stuff like that, I think all over the world it's kind of been on a hold. And as leagues start to get back, like we're seeing in England and Germany and these places, then obviously it will start to pick up.
Right.
I know there's been talk of it's never going to be the same, and all different things. And I think, to be honest, as we went into COVID, it was the unknown.
Yeah.
And I think as we come out of COVID, it's going to be the unknown, because you hear all the media and different people predicting transfer fees are going to drop. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. But yesterday, you see Chelsea are going to spend 200 million. Now, if Chelsea go out and spend 200 million, do you think the other clubs are just going to sit back and say, yeah, Chelsea, go for it, it's COVID-19? No, it won't. So I think going into it, we were unknown, and coming out of it, we're going to be unknown as well.
Okay, let's kind of compartmentalize your clients and speak about the guys locally. And obviously, with local football, the picture isn't really much clearer. You know, we've had the sports minister ask the league and the FA to kind of meet together and try find a resolution. In the midst of all that, what are your kind of hopes as far as the players being taken into consideration when these kinds of decisions are made?
Look, I think from a governmental point of view and from a country point of view, I think South Africa and the government locking the borders like they did, getting us all on lockdown. I mean, even now when you go out, everybody wearing masks, everybody adhering to social distancing.
Yeah.
For me personally, I think the government's done a really, really good job. It could have been a lot worse than it actually has. And so I think they need to be commended for that. I think the public also, as much as it's been very difficult for everybody, I think the public have done really well and continue to do really well. You only even, just going out and you can see how people adhere to the rules. And I think football's no different. I mean, the PSL is a professional, responsible league. I think in general everything they do is top draw. And I don't think returning to football is going to be any different. I've heard the reports from the PSL and from the people, the committee that have been involved are as, the plans are as good as, even better than what the Bundesliga submitted. So I think we've just got to wait for the government approval. We've got to be in the hands of the PSL and the medical people who know what they're doing. And yeah, I mean, they won't ask anybody to be at risk, and nobody will want to be at risk. And as we've seen in England, I mean, yesterday I saw in England, out of 1,200 tests in the Premier League, there was no positive results, which is brilliant. So as long as we can follow the guidelines of the medical people, hoping and praying that we get back to normal, because I think we have to be honest with ourselves that we're not Europe. We're not in the position financially as Europe, and nor are our clubs.
Right.
And the longer it continues, then the fear is, for us in South Africa, we're in danger of losing our league, so be it, and none of us want that. None of us. There's too many of us as stakeholders involved in football that we need it to continue. So, but I'm very confident in the PSL.
Okay, good. Let's talk the matter of contracts. Obviously, a lot of things have been said as to whether players should continue at their current teams, even though they've signed on for a new team, provided they do that until the end of the season. Obviously, players have some interest in that. I may not want to be injured or compromised by the time I arrive at my new team and my contract says I have to move there 1st of July, for example. What's the current guidance, and where are you with your clients when it comes to the contractual affairs for those who might be, in a position to be looking for a new club come the end of the season?
Look, I think there's been guidelines from FIFA laid down to the associations and the leagues, meaning we want you to finish your current league by July the 31st. So I think that gives you, 1 month where you may have a player that's out of contract on the 30th and it goes through to the 31st of July, so by 1 month. Sure. So I've always said, like, for example, I think a common sense approach would apply. I think what will probably happen in a South African context is the PSL clubs will agree. And I would think in that agreement will be 2 or 3 things. It will be, if a player's out of contract on the 30th of June, until we finish the league, that contract will be extended by a month. Sure. I think that will be one thing, which has to get consensus from all parties, so from all the clubs, and then obviously from independent players and clubs. So I think that would be the practical way to do it. Look, you may have a scenario, Kamza, where a player's out of contract on the 30th. He's still got 6 games left, and his club might say, you know what, it's fine. Your contract's finished. We've got 6 games left. You're not really going to be part of the plans anyway, so you can move on. It's fine. Then his contract kicks in with his new club if he's got one from the 1st of July. So I think that's probably the way it's going to go, and I don't really see it being a big problem, because I don't think we're really going to go beyond the end of July, August, September of finishing the league. I think if we're not done by, say, the first week of August, second week of August, then probably the league's not going to continue. It's just going to restart at a later date. Right. But I think from what I'm seeing and reading, we'll probably finish, July, sometime in July, maybe into early August. Have a bit of a couple of week break, which is not going to be easy, but a couple of week break and then into the new season. So I think that's what will happen regarding contracts.
Okay. You brought it up a little earlier that, everyone's feeling the pinch as far as business is concerned. Football clubs are businesses. And of course, we've been hearing about pay cuts being handed out in some clubs. Have any of your clients been affected by a pay cut?
Yes, we do have. In the NFD, we've got a client that there were 60. I think it was 60%. They only received 60% of the salary, which was almost just put on them. It wasn't an agreement. In the PSL, no, not really. Obviously, a couple of the clubs put out concerns to say, look, we may have to do this, we may have to do that. Yeah. And I know there was some discussions held, but so far so good, because the PSL have paid grants and everything's been done on that side. Yeah. To be fair, in the PSL, we've not had a situation where players have not been paid or they've taken a cut. So at the moment, no, only in the NFD.
And that NFD case, I mean, what happens then? I mean, is that a contractual issue, or is it one of those where you kind of are forced to kind of go along with it because of the circumstance?
It's a contractual issue, but at the moment, there's not a lot you can do about it anyway, because with things being closed, it's not like you can go to the PSL or to the DRC or contest it at the moment because of the situation. It was done more in a, guys, it's payday, we can only pay you this scenario. Will it have to be addressed at a later date? Of course it will be. I don't know. Look, we don't do that much in the NFD, if I'm really honest. You know, we've got a few youngsters in there that might be on loan, but in general, we don't do too much in the NFD. But I would imagine there's probably in the NFD, it's probably more prevalent than the PSL. And my question would be then is, if they are going to restart the NFD, would that possibly create a problem? If players have not received salaries, are they going to be wanting to finish the league? So, you know, that's something that may or may not be something that needs to be addressed. But in terms of the PSL, I think so far so good is the word for players and getting paid.
Okay. And then looking to the future, I mean, your criteria for selecting clients, I'm sure you have them. Do they change now, or are you going to be more selective, considering the current economic crisis and what's going to be left of football when we get past this whole COVID thing?
I think every agency really, and every agent's probably different. We've always had a business model that we've kind of stuck to. You know, we've been at the forefront. In my 11 years of being based in South Africa from the UK, I think we've been at the forefront of taking talent from Africa to Europe, and even from, you know, South Africa, especially, you know, being involved in a lot of overseas deals. And our business model has always been the same, is that, you know, we're looking to sign sort of the best young talent and nurture it with a viewpoint of getting that young talent to the highest possible career point, you know, whether that's overseas with somebody like Keegan Dolly or Yigif Links, or whether that's local. Obviously, you know, we're part of Base Soccer, CAA America, one of the world leaders. So we also have a remit that we kind of follow that, you know, in terms of our recruitment policy and how we are. We're very hands-on in terms of our scouting network. We have, I think in Joburg at the moment, we're about 5 on the ground in Joburg. Three on the ground in Joburg, 2 on the ground in Cape Town, 1 in Tanzania, and then West Africa, Senegal. So, yeah, I mean, we do all of our own scouting. People who know me well will tell you that I also do a lot of my own scouting in terms of junior games and stuff like that. So in terms of the way we recruit, our policy, is it going to change? I don't think it'll change so much, Kamza. But at the same time, you know, we've never been a company that wants to run with hundreds of players anyway. Yeah. To be honest, you know, we do have a large stable, but we think it's a quality stable. We like to run our agency like a family. You know, I'm very hands-on all the time with all the players, and that's how we like to keep it. And we've not like tried to outgrow ourselves or have, you know, 200-300 clients where, you know, you can't always control it. So
Okay. No, I hear you. And then, I mean, you make a good point that you keep an eye and you look out in particular for young gems. Young gems seem to be, you know, more and more looking to ply their trade overseas, in countries where, you know, obviously they might get more first team opportunities as opposed to back here. Are you seeing more of that trend in your own stable of more and more young players just saying, listen, I don't necessarily need to play for one of the big 4 or 5 in SA. Let me go overseas and learn my craft and perfect my craft over there?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. It's every young boy's dream in Africa to go to Europe. I always say that, you know, I'm from Europe and Europe's like Africa. You would, if you had a choice between living in Santon and maybe living in Sierra Leone, you're going to choose Santon.
Of course.
And Europe's no different. To be honest, Europe's no different. So you've also got to be careful, because you can think you go into one of these obscure countries in Europe, and to be honest, your opportunity or the way you might get treated or the money or whatever it might be will be nowhere near the standards you can get in South Africa.
Right.
So, but it's every young boy's dream, and I get that. So I don't think COVID's going to change that. It's always been the young players' dreams is to get there. It's not always possible, and I always say, Kamza, the hardest thing about being a football agent in South Africa is trying to move players overseas, because I always say the same thing, is that I think our public automatically think that on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, the scouting Anderlecht or the scouting PSG sits in his little chair with his cup of tea and he watches the PSL. Unfortunately, South Africa's not really a country that is on a lot of radars of a lot of clubs and a lot of scouts. So to get a player to Europe, I can tell you, it takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of marketing. You've got to have a very good network, of which we do. And obviously, you know, working with base soccer, we've got offices in every major city in Europe. We've got offices in the MLS. We've got offices in Brazil, in Uruguay. So, you know, with our partnership with them has helped us a lot over the years with our network. But even with that network, a lot of work goes in from our side in terms of marketing the players, making sure we've got all the footage, making sure we're putting players to football clubs in Europe, per se, that have the quality to be there. Right. And then, you know, at the moment, what you're going to have is you're going to have a dead market, and you're going to have our players are going to be competing with a lot of players in Europe that are going to be free. And, you know, we all know that South African transfer fees are pretty high, if we're honest, for that first step into Europe, you know? Yes. I think with Percy and Keegan Dolly, for example, their prices were at that level because they won the African Champions League. They played in the Club World Cup. They went to, Percy didn't, I don't think, did Percy go to the Olympics? I can't remember off the top of my head. No. Anyway, but they went to the Olympic Games. So you know, they've had them stages and they did well. So I think they kind of went for that higher level at a time when football was riding the crest of the wave. Whereas now it's going to be different. And I can tell you now, talking to European clubs about one or two of our clients that we know are ready to go to Europe, is you might be looking at loans with option for this next 12 months. You might be looking at lower transfer fees and maybe more on add-ons, what we call add-ons. You know, you might be looking at some kind of deals where initial payments won't be down immediately. Right. So I think as an agent, you've got to be innovative, okay? Because we all want the same thing, and ultimately, the more young players we can get into Europe, like Keegan, like Percy, like Bongani, like Lebogang, you know, and people like that, and Gift Links, the more players we can get into Europe can only help South African football as a country, because let's be honest, we're not at the level as a nation where we should be. Right. Okay, we've improved, but we're still not there as a nation. We should be in that top 3, that top 4, that top 5 of Africa. Once we do that, I'm telling you now, European clubs and European scouts are going to take us more seriously. Right. However, it's a double-edged sword, because you've got players that want to go overseas. Ultimately, when they go overseas, let's be honest, they earn more money. We know that in general. Okay. But then you've got clubs here that are ultimately running businesses. So, you know, as an agent, you've got to try and get the happy medium of trying to get a deal that suits the football club, that suits the player, that suits the performance and the development of football in the country. That's the hardest job, Kamza, because ultimately, you know, as we've seen in previous deals where it's no secret it's been a bit of a fight to get players out, okay, and as much as you fully understand it, it's still in my opinion, the hardest job is to get a player from here to Europe, to a good standard of Europe. If you know what I mean. I hear you. A good standard of Europe.
Okay. If we look at things through that developmental lens that we've just discussed, how far off do you think we are? I mean, you know, some will point to certain things that are happening, like the MDC. Some will point to the fact that development seems to be taken a bit more seriously at this point in time. How far are we from developing players that are going to be an easy sell for you when you're trying to pitch them overseas?
I think to be honest with you, we have some really good setups in terms of academies and development.
Right.
I've often said that. I think some of them are as good as you'll find overseas.
Okay.
I think we've got some really good coaches. We've got some really good junior coaches. We've got some really good coaches of all creeds and colours coming through, which bodes well for the future. I think we do a lot of things right in terms of development, but we do a lot of things not right. And in my experience, I think we don't pay enough from an early age. So when I say an early age, let's say from 13, really, you know, when a boy enters an academy, really, at that age, I don't think even at the better academies in South Africa, and I'm predominantly talking about South Africa because it's a South African show. I don't think we attribute enough to nutrition, to getting the athletes. So, you know, in academies, getting the athletes, the young boys, the right nutrition, putting the right nutrition into the body in order for the bodies to develop. I don't think we spend enough time on the physical development of our players. You know, South Africans generally are not big. Okay. But you don't always need to be a giant to play football. But, you know, we can be a lot stronger. So I don't think we realise how much that makes a difference in terms of the whole makeup of a professional player. So I think nutrition, the physical side, in terms of just building and adapting the body from an early age to once you get to that 16, 17, 18, you know, and look, our junior sides have done brilliant. I mean, I've been so proud of South African junior sides, you know, with Thabo when they got to the 2 World Cups and Malefi and, you know, going to the Olympics with Owen. So from an Africa point of view, we've been in that top 3, you could argue, at junior level. Now we need to do it from senior level. But what I'm trying to say is that when you get to them stages, Kamza, you know, and you're playing on an under-20 World Cup final or a under-20 AFCON or whatever, that's where I'm saying when our players are going into that tournament, I think if we spent more time in dedicating more in them areas, that will take our football to another notch. So I think definitely nutrition, definitely the physical side, and then obviously on the mental side, you know, in terms of how do we prepare our players for the overseas world? How do we prepare our players for going to Europe? How do we prepare our players if they don't go to Europe but they're in South Africa to handle their money properly? And I don't think we do enough on that, on the education side, and I think we can do more. And what irritates me is mainly from, say, Joe Public or some sections of the media, it's easy to point a finger at an agent and go, oh, well, that player earned loads of money, but now he's retired and he's washed up. You know? And like, they point the fingers at the agents, but, you know, our take on that is we can take the horse to the water, we can't make it drink. So in other words, we're not an agency that will control a player's money. You know, I will take a young player, and I'm not going to name names, and I can say, look, this is what we would like you to do. This is the right thing to do. Pension schemes, investment. And some players are really good. But unfortunately, some players are not good. And some players have got more responsibilities on the shoulder, okay, from the peers, from the family, from the tax, from the tax that they have to pay in order to help their siblings or mum and dad. And when you actually see what some of them have to go through, it's really difficult for them. So not all players are the same, but all we can do as an agency is educate and try and point them in the right direction and do the best we can in order to, you know, life beyond football. And I always say we all want to play for Real Madrid. We all want to win the Champions League, but ultimately the game's about money, and the game is about maximizing your career potential and your career earnings like any other industry. By the time you're retiring at 33, 34, 35, whatever it might be, you are financially set up to take that into your next life in terms of life beyond football, whether you stay in the industry or you go into another industry. And along the way, education is key. So, you know, there's a few of our players that are into education and do look at it seriously.
Yeah.
Somebody like Robin Gilandi, who came from Malawi at 16 to Sundowns. I took him to Atletico Madrid, as you'll probably remember, when he was 18. He's still playing now at 27. And for the last 2 years, because Robin missed out on his schooling, really, by coming from Malawi at that tender age,
Yeah.
you know, Robin's out there. Robin's now educating himself in terms of, you know, he's been doing courses with the Sports Institute of Barcelona and educating himself in the football front, because he sees himself probably going into administration.
Right.
So, yeah, you know, as an agency, all you can do is point people in the right directions. But like I say, we're not an agency that controls. You know, it has to come from the player.
Of course.
If a player wants to go and buy, you know, I did an interview with Gift Links with your colleagues, and you know, I was really proud of what Gift said, and he said, like, you know, he can go and buy a brand new Range Rover or whatever, a fancy car tomorrow, but at the end of the day, what does it do? It's going to depreciate. You know, it could crash or whatever.
Exactly.
He's not up on that. What he's into is putting his money into what I've sort of taught him, is to say, put your money into property, put your money into a pension scheme, because that's the other thing we don't have. You know, we don't have a contributory pension scheme within the League of South Africa.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to try and get your players at the moment to try and contribute to a pension scheme from as early as they start getting the first professional contract. So, you know, it's good to see like somebody like Gift or Keegan Dolly from a financial point of view, and other players here locally are the same, but it's good to see them when they do it the right way.
Right. Okay. And then lastly, in terms of your relationship as an agent with, you know, the different structures, in terms of the league, obviously, you know, the clubs, you face them, but when it comes to a body maybe such as SAFPU, the players union, what's your relationship? How would you characterize an agent's relationship, your agency in particular, with the players union? Now, I'm sure you agree that they fill an important role. How would you kind of, you know, look at what they've done so far?
To be honest, I've always, in my company, have always had a great relationship with SAFPU.
Okay,
to be honest,
yeah.
We've used SAFPU many times, and SAFPU's main lawyer, I suppose, is our company lawyer that we've used for years.
Okay.
And they've helped us with various things. Whether
so you're all on the same team, yeah.
Yeah, they've helped us loads of times with different issues with players, different cases. I think they do a lot of good work. I don't think they get the credit for what they do. I think all players, in all honesty, should be in the union. And I don't say that because I'm saying join the union and then, you know, you can have a fight. I don't mean it like that. But I think the more players that pay in, the more resource this union will have.
Right.
And I don't think players realise is, like, you know, Toboko Monyai was telling me 2 weeks ago that if you're a member of the union, you've got access to something like 10,000 rand a year or once off in terms of education. You know, so a player can join and he can access a grant or a payment to help him through education. So I think the more players that join, the more money goes into the coffers. I think it's a great initiative which the SAFPU have done with the PSL, where they've kind of joined together for the better of football and for the better of players. I think that's a relationship that needs to grow even further, because let's be honest, you know, the players are the commodity of the league, you know, and, you know, the league is very good and we've got really good players, and, you know, the players also need to be treated fairly and be protected and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think the union has got a big role to play. I've worked closely with them over the years and given them some of my ideas. You know, I'm very big on pension. I really think if we could get some kind of SAFPU players pension where it was almost mandatory to join it, I think that would help us, because I'm tired of, you know, reading a story about a player who's got to 33 and he's got nothing left, and then people get blamed, and it's not always the case. I mean, players are adults. Yeah, some of them maybe have made mistakes, but at the end of the day, if we had a pension there, at least everybody, the league, the agents, the clubs, everybody could look at each other and go, well, we did our job because he had his pension at 33.
Sure.
You know?
Exactly.
You know, so I think if we could somehow work out that pension for all players, and might be an idea the PSL do with SAFPU, with somebody like an ABSA, you know, or Standard Bank, where we come up with some scheme for football players where they can pay into that pension scheme. So I think that would be good. But I do believe that SAFPU would do a very good job.
Great, Mr. Paul Mitchell from Siyavuma Sports. Thank you so much for your time, sir, and kind of giving us a good rundown of how to view the whole, you know, football landscape through an agent's eyes. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on, and good luck with your show going forward.
Thank you very much, and to you, to the agency and all your players, wish you all the best post-COVID.
Thank you very much.
Take care, sir.
Cheers.